welcome to another episode of Pro Garage, and today I'm going to be working on showing you how to replace a starter on this G37. So if you have a G37 and you're trying to replace a starter, I'm going to walk you through and how to do that. This process will be very similar or identical to a 370Z. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll show you exactly what to do. So first thing is first, of course, you're going to have to raise up your vehicle in the front. I have it set up in these cribs, and the car is high enough where I could slide underneath and I could remove the starter and I could access everything. But before we get started, I'm going to emphasize this part because you could damage components or blow fuses, and you're not going to be happy because the car won't start or you have other problems happening. The first thing you're going to want to do is disconnect the battery, because remember, the battery terminal goes straight to the starter. You're going to have to disconnect it, disconnect the battery, and that's what we're going to do first. So now I have moved my way to the bottom of the vehicle, and this is where majority of the video is going to be recorded. I am going to go ahead and remove the skid plate that I have here so I could access the starter. So I'm going to start with that. If you don't have a skid plate, you can skip this part. If you do, now's the time to do it. I am underneath the car. This is the left-hand side. This is the transmission, and the engine block is here towards the front, and the starter lives right back here. So you're going to have to access the electrical connectors through the front, and for the bolts, you're going to unbolt these through the backs. And I'm going to loosen the cable that goes right into the starter. That's where the battery cable is, and also the activation solenoid. This activates the solenoid right here. I'm going to disconnect this plug. So I'm going to go ahead and start doing all that, and then I'll walk you through everything. So right here, I'm using a 14 mil socket. So now that I have these two bolts removed, you can see I have this lower one and the one right above it. I have it removed, and they were 14 millimeters. This starter is pretty much loose and ready to come out. So you don't have to loosen the two that are in the top. You only loosen the two that are down here. So you guys could understand a little bit more of what's going on. So right now we disconnected this bolt and this bolt. So the starter is loose and it's now able to be removed. But you also have this cable right here that you have to get to it. The easiest thing that I have discovered is to loosen the starter first. It kind of falls down and it sits right where the steering rack is, and you could let it hang there. It sits on there, and then you could get a socket and remove this bolt. This goes straight to the battery. That's why we disconnected the battery. We already have this plug disconnected. That's the plug that we disconnected in the front. So now all we have to do is unbolt this. Since I mentioned before it is a tight fit, I'm going to be using this 1/4 inch ratchet, and it does have a swivel head, and it's going to let me get into this bolt. And this is a 13 mil nut right here. So we're just going to do that underneath the car. So now I'm going to do the same exact thing that I told you I was going to do. So you guys can see I have the starter almost popping out of here. It's like giving birth to a starter right now. The VQ has to push a little bit. You have to help it push and bring it out of this canal right here. All right, so you can see your starter right here. So it looks like we're gonna have to create a little bit more clearance. We're gonna have to remove this bracket. This goes right underneath the AC compressor, and it's held by a 10 millimeter bolt, and it's right here. I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that bolt so we can make a little bit more clearance. There we go. Will that do it? Looks like it did. So there you go, guys. The starter's out. It wasn't that bad. It's gonna be relatively easy. So if this is it for you for the video, thank you so much for watching. think about subscribing because I have a ton of how-to videos. But just in case you were wondering, why am I replacing the starter? Well, the starter was starting to have the symptom of it would click and nothing would happen, and you could go underneath, hit it with a hammer or a pry bar, and you could get it to work again. So the starter was getting hung up, it wasn't working anymore. So we're just gonna replace it. I am using an old one. I'm using a good used one, and I would not recommend so much to do this. I'm gonna take the risk, but if you're down there, you're replacing a starter, you might as well put a new one in. I'm gonna take the gamble. If you take the gamble, you know you could end up in this situation all over again, and you have to do this job all over again. Which is, it isn't bad. It's just 2 bolts, some the cables, and it's out. It's not bad, but keep that in mind. All right, so let's put this bad boy back on. So, of course, if you're gonna use a used one, like I am, I make sure to clean this back terminal. This is where the battery cable goes, because you wanna make sure you could transfer all the power into the starter to start this engine. So, I'm gonna just go ahead and slip it back in just the same way I pulled it out. So now I'm just attaching the bolts back on, securing the starter where it's supposed to live. We're just gonna snug everything up. Don't forget to plug this cable back on. If you don't plug this on, then the starter won't know when to start. So this sends a signal from your starter relay to start the engine. And of course, now I get to put the bracket back on that I removed. So now, of course, we're gonna connect the battery back on, and we're gonna start it and see if it works. See if that starter works. So it starts, that's a great sign. If you stayed around until the end of this video, thank you so much. You're awesome for doing that. Again, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one.